Welcome to this first edition of the EVA podcast. I'm Paul Eden, editor of EVA magazine. And the plan is for myself and Mo Banks, sales manager at EVA, to join me as occasional host. We'll have a variety of guests every now and again as well, I hope. I imagine if you've been to the NBAA or the E-Base shows, you've probably seen Mo and I on the exhibition floors. We're an unlikely pair. We're not easily missed. Usually I'd say laughing about something, as you can see Mo is already just at the memory. Usually at one another, if I'm honest. And what we're doing there, we're working the floor. I'm looking for stories, and honestly, he's generating the revenue that allows me to write them. So if you see us, say hello. Mo, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the podcast, about EVA Media, and about EVA Magazine and your role with them?
Absolutely. So what we're doing is we're putting together, like Paul said, some podcast series, some episodes, as we would like to say, on business aviation. Sometimes I'll be involved, sometimes I won't be involved. Sometimes Paul will be bringing on his own guests. What I'm doing is I'll be going around on private aircrafts, giving viewers tours of what they can expect from an aircraft. So with people going on the aircraft interior, exterior, of course, looking at the cockpit of an aircraft as well. Just a nice sort of 360 interior and exterior views and a bit more detail about things that viewers don't know about the aircrafts. So yeah, and of course, this is all from established from the product that we have and me and Paul work with, on, which is EVA magazine, which is a business aviation publication. And yes, I do go for revenue, but I actually love the product, believe it or not. Been doing it for about 10 years now. So, and again, me and Paul make a great team, and we're just working as hard as we can to give the best product out there to the industry, digital and print. Now this sounds like a sales pitch, so I'm gonna turn it down because I'm not trying to sell right now.
I think though part of the plan there is that you're going to go out there and you're going to give us access to things that many of us would never get to see.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking to a business aviation industry here, but there are so many roles within that. There's so many people, so much aviation, so many great jets, helicopters, whatever. And Mo, you're going to be our roving camera out there, just getting into these places, showing us things, showing us really just how great the industry is and the variety of people and aviation out there. Um, so that the concept for the podcast is obviously based around aviation, but that's going to be quite a loose theme, I would say, because I'm an absolute av geek. I get very distracted by all things aviation, and there's a lot of really interesting people out there in business aviation with 20, 30 years in different parts of the industry behind them. So I think if you stick with us, you can expect some tangents, you can expect some interesting conversations, you can expect some digression. And I think that this time around, what I'd like to do is just dip into a couple of things that really interest me, which is the way the history of aviation all fits together. And then I'd like to speak a little bit about sustainability. But first, Mo, you mentioned there you've been in the industry about 10 years.
Mhm.
You came to the industry, well, more or less as a child, from my perspective, as a young person with no aviation background. Now you've spent those 10 years with these remarkable people. You've been at airports, you've hung around jets, you've looked in cockpits, you've done all of that stuff. What's your impression of this slightly unusual, extraordinary industry?
Impression is, I would say that when you come into it, I think you get hooked. People might think it's just about planes and you just fly, but it's so much more to that.
Mm,
I
yeah.
mean, engineering side of it's phenomenal.
Hmm.
Then you don't, people look at a fuselage and don't see what's in the fuselage. They just see a great interior, and you just sit down and a flight attendant brings you some food or some drinks, but there's so much more to it. What a pilot does in the cockpit, it's just what the ground support team does.
Mm,
Is so much more. What the air traffic control team does. There's so much more to it.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
it's really, and you get to rub with phenomenal people.
yeah,
You get to learn how passionate some people are about this industry. Hence the
mm,
reason they build a career. I mean, let's speak about Mark Burns
mm,
and
yeah,
and Gulfstream. I mean, 41 years
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, yeah,
That's something this industry allows of we're not in banking or we're not in software where you have to come in and buy your way in. You can really work your way from ground up,
Mm,
and you don't
yeah.
see that in other industries.
No, I think with Mark there, what you've struck on there is a great example of someone. I think he came in as a CAD designer and ended up as president of Gulfstream, which is phenomenal in itself.
Absolutely.
Um, Really interesting that he almost did that locally because he was at school not far from Gulfstream. He got a job there and he stayed with it, which in itself is remarkable. But that passion, I'll give you a little example. I was speaking to someone recently. She'd worked for an aviation company. Lockdown came along, things got a little bit wobbly. She looked for another opening and went to work for one of the UK Olympic teams doing their marketing and publicity and all that kind of thing. She's now back in aviation because she said the Olympic people didn't have the passion that she'd experienced in aviation. I think that is just remarkable that a young woman could say, hey, these elite sports people, it's not the same as aviation. I've got to get back to it. And now she's back in aviation. It's just brilliant. So, okay.
I know people that you would know and have the same experiences with, that some people have actually walked into the industry with no love for it.
Mm, yeah.
And then you ask them a year later, how is it? And they're just so passionate
Yeah. Mm,
about the industry.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it really is phenomenal. It
I,
really, really is.
I find as well, however much you think you've experienced, however much you think you know, the next person has always done something or seen something or knows something that makes you go, oh, what? Wait, hang on. Tell me that again. How does that work?
Mhm.
Where did you go? Why did you do that? It's just, there are so many stories for me as a writer. There are just so many stories to explore here. You can write thousands of words and not even mention the name of an aeroplane because it's just so fascinating. So, okay, I'm going to move on because I could talk here for hours, and that's not really the idea of this. But um, I'll talk some more about my way into aviation in subsequent episodes. Hopefully, someone will hang around to hear that. But let's start off then with some heritage, and I want to talk about the King Air because it's the 60th anniversary of the first flight of the King Air. And Mo, I'm sure you're very familiar what King Air look
Mhm.
like. You've seen them at shows multiple times.
Uh,
And what's remarkable for me is that if you went back to the 60s and looked at the King Air, it would pretty much look the same as it does now. Paint scheme a bit different, maybe, but King Air's a King Air. All the models King Air look like all the models of the King Air. Imagine, let's think, I don't know, a 1964 Ford Mustang.
mhm.
Imagine what that looks like, and then imagine if that was the current Ford Mustang. You'd be like, what's this old thing? What's going on there? That's so retro. But the King Air still sits in the Textron Static Park, presumably at the Singapore Air Show as we speak, and looks like an aeroplane of today. The engines are still PT6s, but they're the latest versions, of course, in the new models. The avionics are different, the interiors are different, but it's a great example of what you were saying about. You look at the outside and you think, oh, look, there's a King Air. But you go on the inside and everything moves on. I just think that longevity is incredible. But more than that, what fascinates me is that the King Air, although it's a Textron product today, the brand is Beech or Beechcraft,
Yep.
and it has been since 1964. But that name Beech relates to a person, Walter Beech, and he created arguably the first business aviation aeroplane and flew it in 1932. So you could argue that that Beech Textron business aviation legacy has been around since the early 30s. Just the scope of that immediately goes beyond here's a King Air, it flies people around. And that for me is part of the enthusiasm, the passion, the depth of aviation that just keeps me wanting to write these stories all the time. Moving on from that, I would say if you follow LinkedIn, you look at social media, you follow aviation a bit, another significant anniversary this year is the 50th anniversary of the F-16, which makes it 4 years younger than me and quite a lot older than you, Mo, I think.
Not too old then.
Slightly depressing, but hey. So, shame. Another one of my links here then is that the F-16, of course, although it's Lockheed Martin product today, was originally a General Dynamics product. And what companies does General Dynamics own? Gulfstream,
Gulfstream,
of
yeah.
course. Yeah. So we come back by this weird route through history. We come back to Mark Burns and what you were saying about the passion, and that's what drives companies forward, and that's what drives the business. Now, Gulfstream has just put out a release overnight, which is good news for me because it gives me something to talk about. Where they've just flown the G700 to the Singapore Air Show, broken a bunch of speed records on the way. And I'm just glancing at the figures here. The numbers don't really matter, but they flew Los Angeles to Nice in France, just over 10 hours, an average speed of Mach point 0.9, which on the face of it is pretty incredible. There aren't many airplanes, even military airplanes, that could fly that far, that long at that speed, but they did it carbon neutral. And that is the key here. And I think, I hear people saying to me that sustainability is something that young people are embracing. I think, Mo, that's probably true of you. You're very aware of these initiatives, and that's where you see things going.
Of course. I mean, but there's I mean, we're starting as an industry, right? I mean, I know we're talking about or speaking about business aviation as a whole. I know what Virgin Atlantic done as well.
Hmm.
Um, but there's so much more to it. It's such
Mm,
an infrastructure change. And like I'm all for it. Like
yeah.
I'll be honest, and as an industry, we have to be.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, I think that it's a time scale thing, and people need
mm,
to understand that it's going to take years and years and years
yeah.
for it to really happen and for the industry to benefit.
Yeah.
So I know there's such a rush to it.
Mm,
I mean, you know a lot more about this than I do, Paul. Um,
sure.
but I think there's just it's. I mean, as an industry, we're making it. Oh, it needs to change. We need to change now. I mean, the change is all good,
Mm,
but I
yeah.
think it's going to be. I mean, decades for it to really take shape.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right that we're in this for decades. Um, I think perhaps the business aviation industry in particular is just waking up to the fact that it's very good at achieving sustainability, or at least it has the ability to achieve sustainability in a way that makes it an example to the world. It seems somehow the media has twisted that to business aviation in particular being the mighty evil in all of this, and no one cares. All these people are flying around in their privilege, burning dead dinosaurs, and really don't care. That just isn't the case. For me, I see almost business aviation is almost a Formula One in this. It's a proving ground for the technologies that the wider world of aviation, but also other industries can have a look and say, hey, look how these guys did it. They're really setting examples here. And aviation actually is a small part of the overall emissions problem, but it is a part of the problem. We acknowledge that, we're working towards it. I think though that you are right. We need to see how long this is going to take. My concern is that we lose our way and don't realize that this is a problem with lots of solutions that need to work together. So, we hear a lot about electric aviation. People say, oh no, hydrogen is the future or electric is the future. They're kind of all the same thing. Um, and they aren't the future. If you want to fly from Los Angeles to Nice in just over 10 hours, you're not going to do it on batteries. You're not going to do it on electric motors. You're going to do that for the next 30, 40, maybe even 50 years on jet fuel. That's inescapable. Flying distances, flying anywhere fast, really, really good way to do that is on a bag of hydrocarbons. That's just the way it is. We can't escape that.
Here's a thought, right? And this
Mm,
is something going back to speaking about electric vehicles
mm,
and things like that, and why I think people are looking for it to break through in aviation.
yep.
People think that, oh, there's electric cars,
Mm,
and then they think, oh, planes. But when you think of planes and cars, the safety on a plane and a car is two separate identities, isn't it?
yeah,
We
absolutely.
we can't. I mean, what Tesla are doing and all the other OEMs in car manufacturers is phenomenal. It really is.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, for a plane carrying, if you're in a business jet,
yeah.
let's say on a ultra long haul, 14 to 16 people,
Mm, mm,
and then on a commercial aircraft, 200 packs or more,
yeah.
the safety element's huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's centuries of development in personal. That really is. We're looking at centuries
Yeah.
for it to
Yeah.
really, maybe 50 to 100 years to take
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So
that's
I mean,
right.
people need to the way people are is oh, an industry's doing this and aviation needs to be like this. No, because aviation we have safety
Yeah.
regulations to pass.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
Yeah.
where people are flying in the sky at 35 plus thousand feet.
Mm,
There's lives on board.
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
instead of going back to what you said about media saying about business aviation, they're only attacking it because of people traveling in it.
Yeah,
We're talking
that's
about,
right.
prime ministers. We're talking about heads of government, heads of states. That's
Yeah,
the reason they're attacking the industry. But aviation needs time.
yeah, it absolutely does. And yeah, I think that the time is an important aspect of this. I think the admission that hydrocarbons are going to be essential for much of that time is important, but it's the way we generate those hydrocarbons and the way we burn them that's important, which is why I think that we just have to admit sustainable aviation fuel, we need to develop that. And that relies on clean hydrogen. And that really, the production of that just relies on so many things outside aviation. So this isn't just aviation's issue. It's how do we make that sustainable fuel, but also looking at electric propulsion and saying, well, actually, that does work if we're flying short haul. We need to manage the expectation. It concerns me that we talk lots about eVTOLs flying from city to city.
Hmm.
I don't think most cities have the infrastructure for that. I don't think that
I
we
agree.
have the regulatory approval for that.
I agree.
Um, and again, going back to your point about electric cars, someone recently said to me, aviation has to get there slowly. It has to work hard. It will always get there slowly because you can't pull over on a cloud.
You can't.
You know,
I
it
like
goes
that.
horribly wrong.
Yeah, I
You're
like that.
falling into the city,
Yeah.
and you can't afford for that to happen. So I think we have to say, all right, we can see some opportunities to replace some short haul flying. Few passengers, 200, 300 miles with electric aviation, absolutely. But in parallel, if people still want to travel, business jets or airliners, whatever it might be, we've got to get sustainable aviation fuel right as well. So there are lots of different ways of making the fuel as well. So it's lots of different approaches to that solution. Um, and I do think that business aviation, within all of what we've just said, is doing that really, really well. And one or two people are now waking up to the fact that while discretion and protecting clients and all that kind of thing are super important for the industry, we have to get that message out there that, hey, look, we're doing this really well. You guys could do this too. Um, and so certainly I hope that's reflected in the magazine. It's reflected in this podcast. And I think we're going to see some people more openly saying, look at what we're achieving. And I know, Mo, I think you're going out to the schedulers and
Yeah.
dispatchers show
Yeah.
soon.
Mhm.
Um, I hope that what you'll see there is that this isn't just all about fuel either. This is about sustainability across the business in terms of just all that other stuff, that paper and printing and electric cars at FBOs. And I mean, I I think you have a bit more knowledge about sort of ground handling and ground equipment, all that kind of thing than I do. Do you see it creeping into those other parts of aviation as well?
It's funny you mentioned that because I know Swissport have done a huge deal. I think it's about 21% to
Right.
turn their GSE into electric GSE,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
they've just spent something like £7 million.
Mm. Yeah.
So for me, it's I mean, I know people are going to dig at me, but there's always a new industry,
Mm.
and within a new industry, there's always more revenue in the new industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a business, right? So
Yep.
businesses have to make money, and then there's a new
Yep.
trend, and the business follows it, and it's more revenue. But I think people need to give time.
Mm. Yeah.
Nothing happens overnight. It really doesn't. And this is a huge. People want it to. It's like ground support people are now ground handlers, electric, like you said, electric cars.
Mm. Yeah.
Guys, it's going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And
The,
there's big stuff involved here. There's refineries generating fuel from no vegetables or even human waste in one example. Someone says they can do that. That's massive industry. That's industry on a huge scale. But then there's which socket do I plug my electric baggage cart into at the airport, and can I be sure that I'm paying for that power and not one of the other contractors working at the airport? And if someone knocks it over and breaks it, who pays to fix it? So there's that tiny micro level and that macro level as well, and the scope of that is something aviation can manage. You look at any airplane, that's a lot of different bits all moving together. Aviation is used to taking lots of systems and putting them together and making them work. but it's a time thing. It really does need, as you said, the years, more years probably than I'll be in the industry. Possibly not you, Mo, because you're still a child, but more years than I
Yeah.
will for sure. So I think we're in this for the long term. I hope we're into this podcast for a long term as well.
Of
Um,
course.
it's great to just have this platform to think through some ideas. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this who thinks we're very wrong, or perhaps thinks we're right, or has more to add, or just wants to take this even further. Um, you know, we want to hear from you. We would love to have some industry guests on here. I'm sure, Mo, you can think of one or two people who you would love to see coming along. I know perhaps that certain gentleman from Gulfstream is one of them.
Of
Um,
course.
but there are many others out there. If you do see us at shows, if you see Mo at Schedulers and Dispatchers, or you see both of us at eBay or MEAA or something, do come along. Uh, Tell us your story. We always want to know your story, um, and see if we can find a place for you on this podcast. So, really, if you've enjoyed this, then let us know. If you've hated it, well, again, let us know. I can't believe you've hated his smiley face, but you might want to get rid of me. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Um, let us know if you've got ideas to make it better. Then let us know too. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably conclude there with Mo. What are your hopes for this? Where do you see this going?
I would love this to be, and I'm sure you would agree, it's a voice for the
Mm,
industry, not just a
yeah,
voice for executives, but people with interest, people with av geeks,
yeah,
enthusiasts. But again, a huge one for me would be attracting the talent,
mm, yeah,
engaging with them as well. Would love to get people on who maybe an apprentice
yeah,
in business aviation, working in a hangar, an aircraft maintenance hangar. Would
yeah,
love to get that stuff, hear their thoughts, and voice their experience to the younger generation.
yeah, yeah,
That's where I see this as well. Not just
yeah,
giving people the luxury interior exterior of aircrafts and getting great executives on here, because
mm,
that would spark an interest to enthusiasts and the younger generation. But getting
yeah,
people who actually work in it,
yeah,
apprentice, and those kind of people,
yeah,
the new flesh, the new blood,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and
And
of course
I
the old blood as well,
yeah,
just like
no, no.
yourself, Paul.
Thank you so much. That's really kind of you to say so. I was going to say something really wise there about how a sustainable industry needs young people, but you've just
Good.
taken all the wind out of my sails. I just need to go have a little lay down and sleep now, I think. So, we'll see what happens next. But yeah, so hopefully we'll see you soon for a second Eva Media podcast. And yeah, we're looking forward to that. We'll hopefully bring you some new stories, maybe some young people, even younger than him if we can find them, but I don't know if they're out there. And,
They're always out there.
they're always out there.
I'm not that young anymore.
That was shame. Look at him. Oh dear, never mind. Anyway, all right. So thank you, Mo. Thank you for taking the time to
Thank you,
listen.
Paul.
Yeah, no worries at all. And hopefully we'll see you next time.